lessons, I'll be talking with you about the physiology and the function of canine skin and hair coat. It's my belief that as a fellow professional, groomer, or stylist, if we can understand the scientific and medical aspects of how the canine skin and hair coat work, that foundational information will help us provide better overall grooming services, as well as understand and act upon our vital role towards better overall health of the pets we care for. By securing the knowledge that I'm going to share with you today, we can help to strengthen our relationships with fellow pet care professionals and pet owners, and thereby create a niche business skill set for ourselves while raising the level of overall care that we can offer as a whole from our salon businesses. So, that said, let's jump right in and get started with learning about canine skin and hair. So in human aesthetics technology, the skin treatment means rejuvenating skin conditions such as blemishes, lessening aging effects of skin, or adding supportive care regimen to care for the skin proactively. In pets, however, obviously the skin is hidden under the coat. So even if the skin condition is improved, the pet does not necessarily look rejuvenated. It can take a period of a few weeks to actually start to see the emergence of newly forming hair once the skin symptoms have been addressed. Pets cannot be rejuvenated without also rejuvenating their coats. This is the difference, obviously, between pets and humans. Of course, the hidden skin is of importance, so we must aim to rejuvenate the coat and skin at the same time. General pet rejuvenation and supportive care is administered in a combination with separate aspects, such as nutritional support and medical support and skin coat topical care from stylists such as ourselves. So what's the definition of an esthetician? An esthetician is a formal professional title given to those in possession of skilled understanding and exhibiting the ability to make note of abnormal or concerning coat symptoms or issues in canines. They also have the ability to act upon such knowledge in effort to both network with other pet caregivers, the pet's family, and provide positive relief to the pets being cared for through those outlets. As well, they should be proactive within the industry by upholding a standard of care and professional ability that enables growth and, in turn, raises the bar for our entire industry. So our job of caring for skin and coat can have several facets to it. Upon drop-off of each pet when they come into the salon, we're going to look over the pet closely and consult with the owners before they leave, if at all possible. We're going to repeat this consult at the time of pickup with regard to anything we did not see at check-in and to document any and all findings. We are the first line of defense, in my opinion, to notice things and speak up and be an advocate for the animals that we care for. We're also going to want to talk with pet owners about issues we see and recommend simple things that we can do to improve the coat and the overall groom. We also want to be confident in urging them to see a vet if needed and know the limits of our capability and our scope of practice as a groomer within our state. We never diagnose, but instead we dialogue with the owners and use that knowledge to direct them towards better pet health, whether through better grooming practices or by networking with vets to get the pet the help that it needs in order to thrive. We also act to groom the pet with regard to caring for the pet's overall health. We use professional products, tools, and methods which are gentle and conducive to optimal skin and coat health. We also should, in my opinion, know when to say when. We should be comfortable when we feel we should not be grooming a pet and when we must accept the condition of the pet, the lack of support possibly from the owner, and to effectively and objectively do what we can during the course of a groom to provide comfort and relief for the pet. As a pet stylist, we do not diagnose or treat. Instead, we consult, evaluate, and care for. And we always must remember, if we cannot help, at a minimum, we should not harm. So, mentioning scope of practice, each and every state has what's referred to a scope of practice allowance per your state's legislature and the AVMA guidelines. These allowances stand in line with both federal and state guidelines pertaining to what a vet does solely for a pet and what unlicensed, as well as licensed or certified but non-veterinarian individuals are allowed to do for a pet. What this defines is that we, as practicing yet unlicensed professionals, are allowed to do within our salons for our clients and not practice services which fall under medical intervention. The practices that we are allowed to do are only those which would not negatively affect nor hinder the need for actual medical care, nor that would cause us liability in the event of a pet's illness or death. As well, we're staying within those guidelines creates a clear line between what we know we can legally do and what we should avoid doing at all costs. Along with infringement of this legislation comes serious possible repercussions in terms of liability, so it's really important to mention this as one of the first topics in this class, so that we have a clear understanding moving forward. What you do with the information learned within this class is up to you, and the way that you enact upon sharing that knowledge with your clients is of key importance when it comes to remaining within your state guidelines, and it remains an individual choice. It's equally important to remember that we are not licensed veterinarians. We still are often the first line of defense, though, on behalf of the pet which is in pain, suffering, or can be helped by us to regain quality of life through educating the pet owner or guardian. We are also an integral part of the pet's care system and often a valuable bridge between the gaps that can happen between a pet's owner and the medical professional. It's our role, in my opinion, to professionally and progressively care for our pets, and that's the purpose of the course that I've designed. What you will learn within this class is not in any way a risk of being in any infringement on your state's scope of practice allowances. That's very important for you to understand. So anything that you learn here is not going to put you at risk of added liability. If you learn these things and you go back to work and you begin diagnosing or pretending to be a vet, then you could get yourself into trouble. Okay, you can find out more information about the scope of practice on a state-by-state level by going to the avma.org website. On their homepage, click the down bar, and you'll see a tab for the scope of practice allowances. And in there, in alphabetical order, is a list of each state and what they allow or disallow. All right, so let's keep moving forward. We're going to move on into the canine integumentary system. So a quick overview. The skin and hair coat of a canine comprise the outer body covering. The skin is actually an organ, and it's the largest organ of the body. The skin and coat, along with the claws, pads, and skin glands, form what is referred to as the integumentary system. And that's a natural covering, like a skin or a shell or a rind. It's also a coating or an enclosure, etc. The purpose of the canine skin is to protect the dog from the outer elements as well as environmental toxins and hazards. When the skin is healthy and functioning properly, it does the job it was designed to do in an amazing manner. It both cleanses and replenishes itself, it cools and warms itself, it detoxifies itself and maintains a tiny ecosystem for healthy flora to grow and support the overall health of the surface cells and its structure beneath. The skin consists of an outer avascular layer called the epidermis, an inner fibrous corneum or dermis that rests upon supporting layers of fat and very thin muscle and fascia. The epidermis is the body's environmental shield. It's made up of tough keratinized cells that are continuously formed and shed from the surface. In some animals and in some areas of the body, the epidermis contains dark brown pigment that screens the body from harmful rays of the sun and gives the dog its distinctive colors. The dermis is comprised of a network of connective tissue that also contains nerves, blood vessels, hair follicles, sweat, and oil glands. The skin and hair coat combined create the dog's largest sensory organ, monitoring the environment and influencing its body temperature. The skin has many important functions. It prevents desiccation and dehydration, acts as a sensory organ, and is a receptor for the perception of touch, pressure, vibration, heat, cold, and pain. It prevents trauma, protects against invasion of microorganisms and noxious chemicals, and regulates the temperature changes within the body. It's also a site of active vitamin D synthesis, and the subcutaneous tissues serve as a reservoir for fat, electrolyte, water, carbohydrate, and proteins. Secretions from the skin glands waterproof and lubricate the skin and function as pheromones. And pheromones are substances created and secreted by one individual that allows a second individual to recognize it. The skin will reflect the state of health of the animal, as well as indicate the presence of internal disease. The hair coat serves as an insulating layer between the dog's skin and external environment. It protects him from the cold in winter and the heat in the summer. It also serves as aggressive display, such as when his hackles rise, or when the dog is threatened or frightened. So briefly, dogs have several different types of hair. On the dog are both guard hairs and undercoat hairs. The guard hairs are longer, thicker, and stiffer. The smaller undercoat hairs provide the most insulation and softness. The basic unit of the hair production is the hair follicle, or the folliculus pillae. Each follicle has from 1 to 5 or maybe 7 guard hairs at the most, and up to 25 secondary hairs emerging from each follicle. These undercoat hairs grow as a tiny tuft of hair and can be seen to sprout from amid the guard hairs in the pore of the follicle. The type and length of hair coat varies widely among dog breeds. Smooth-haired dogs and toy poodles have the highest density of follicles, giving them lots of guard hair and the fewest number of undercoat hair coming from each follicle. Whereas German Shepherd dogs, Airedales, and Rottweilers have only half as many follicles, but have twice as many undercoat hairs coming from each follicle. The texture of the coat is dependent on both the color of the coat as well as the guard coat to undercoat ratio. Dogs can have as many as 18,000 to 20,000 hairs per square inch of skin. However, when the skin is not functioning at its necessary capacity, the optimal coat can suffer. It can be either from simple lack of necessary upkeep and grooming regimen, or it can be a source of many problematic and discomforting symptoms for the animal, symptoms that are often telltale signs of an underlying issue. It is part of our job, in my opinion, to often be one of the first ways to recognize any issue we see in the pet's skin and overall coat quality. Second, ourselves only to the pet owners noticing a problem, or if the pet's vet happens to notice something at an occasional visit, you can see how incredibly important it is to our job to both understand the canine skin and coat, but also to be confident in relaying to the pet's owners any issues that we see to best provide for the overall health of the dog. It's most important that our professional role always be to rejuvenate through topical conditioning and proactive maintenance of the hair coat. So let's take a deeper look at the anatomy of the canine skin. So previously I briefly explained that in the overview, but now we're going to break this down into each individual layer of the skin and their purpose, okay? So a dog's skin is comprised of 3 layers. We have the epidermis or stratum corneum, which is visible to us. Beneath that, the dermis, and beneath that, the hypodermis. Canine skin is anywhere from 8 to maybe 12 times thinner than human skin, but it actually contains more layers, so the layers are more fine and more thin. And then feline skin's even thinner than canine skin, lending reason to why dogs react before humans to allergy seasons. And cats, commonly, you will see an allergic reaction or some type of a negative reaction even faster than with a dog. So let's take a look at the epidermis to start, okay? So the epidermis is the outermost superficial layer that's visible to us. It's comprised of 5 cellular layers. Of those 5 layers, there are the horny layers, and those are the outward most visible layers of skin cells and the first line of defense for the skin. These dead cells are flat, they're translucent and overlapping with horny areas that help them to be lifted away. Then beneath that, we have the clear cell layers. These are dead keratinized cells found only on the callus and foot pad areas of the skin, okay? So clear cell layers are going to be in areas like the calluses on the elbows or the hocks, the foot pad areas, and certain areas of the nose. Those are semi-permeated by water, surfactants, and conditioners, okay? So on a superficial level, your water, surfactants or cleansers and conditioners are going to permeate or go through the horny layer entirely and superficially into the deeper clear cell layers, okay? Beneath that, we have a single granular layer. These are dying cells that are moving up from the prickle cell layer beneath to either the clear cell layer or horny cell layers, depending on the location on the pet. Replacement time here is approximately 20 to 22 days, but with injury or irritation, this can actually lessen to about 15 days. Beneath that, we have several layers of prickle cells. These are basal cells that have been moved up through the process of overproduction, constantly being pushed up into the granular layer. The more clippering a coat gets, this causes a thickening of that cellular layer, okay? So when you clip, that's what causes changes in the cellular structure of that layer of skin and therefore the hair coat that it produces. And then beneath that, we have a single basal or basement layer. So the basal layer is where the epidermal cells begin, okay? The cells here have active nuclei and they're constantly reproducing. So again, those layers are the horny layer, which is also called the stratum corneum, the clear cell layer, which is also called the stratum lucidum. And within those two layers, it's important to remember that we have epidermal nerve endings, okay? And that's important because if we have itchiness, or I should say if we have dryness, we commonly will have itchiness. So remember, sometimes itchiness is simply a secondary reaction to overall dryness. And by alleviating dryness and adding moisture on a regular basis, we can actually get rid of that generalized itchiness and flakiness that many of the pets come into us with exhibiting those symptoms. Beneath that, we have the granular layer or the stratum granulosum. Beneath that, the prickle cell layer or the stratum spinosum. And then beneath that, the basal basement layer or stratum basal, okay? So the epidermis also provides three main functions which originate in the basal layer of cells. Within there are keratinocytes, and these are protein cells with a basal layer that provide a barrier preventing loss of fluids and protection from bacteria and environmental pollutants. They also produce soft and hard keratin. Soft keratin is made up of cholesterol and phospholipids, which make up the outer layers of skin and for the skin pliability, whereas hard keratin is for the outer covering of hair and nails. Within there, you'll also find melanocytes, so melanin granules, which give a bit of UV protection for the keratinocytes from the sun's rays. But remember, it should be noted that animals do not respond to sunlight with increased production of melanin granules. That makes an animal prone to sunburn, and an overstimulation of keratinocytes in effort to combat those UV rays will almost always end up in causing various forms of skin cancer, tumors, or spots. We also have in there Langerhans cells. These give protection from bacteria, pollutants, and microorganisms from entering the body. These cells produce lysosomes that contain lipids and digestive enzymes to collect antigens, or small bits of protein, from those pollutants in the skin. These are taken to the white blood cells or lymphocytes and thereby ingested and destroyed. Okay? An important note here is that once a cell is created and exposed, epidermal cells take an additional 20 to 21 days to die completely and be shed from the skin. However, through mechanical manipulation or stressors, which signal the skin to more rapidly produce these cells in a process of hyperkeratinization, this period can be drastically reduced. So just like with us, the body has a natural casting mechanism where it works to band-aid and cover and insulate an injury or an irritation in an effort to heal that and create a pattern of normalcy or homeostasis. So the skin is always acting to balance itself and create or generate that pattern of homeostasis. So if we intervene too aggressively with any of our methods or our tools, we can actually cause a pattern of cascading or domino effect on the other side of it that can cause secondary symptoms. Okay, so once we start to begin to see healing and beneficial aspects to skin rejuvenation, we want to step back with our methods and take on the next most gentle method in topical application so that we don't remain intrusive to the skin since it's trying to heal itself. Okay, so beneath that we have the dermis. In my opinion, the dermis belongs to the vet. The epidermis belongs to us. The dermis belongs to the vet. The dermis is responsible for most of the depth of skin. It supports and nourishes the epidermis and the dermal appendages that are all contained within the epidermis. Excuse me, I had to take a drink there. So around the dermal appendages are sugar molecules, elastin fibers and collagen, and blood vessels and capillaries to provide support to the skin elasticity. And all of this is nourished by sebum, or skin oil. The sugar molecules that are within the dermis attract and hold on to water and help to hydrate the skin. The collagen that's in there is a tough and fibrous material which maintains elasticity and strength of the skin, but this does deteriorate with age and ill health. If you see a breakdown in skin pliability with dogs as they become older, a lot of times it can be an endocrine-related issue, such as Cushing's, diabetes, hyper or hypothyroidism, etc. You'll also have elastin in there, elastic material that maintains the skin's ability to hold shape, and with age, the breaking down of this causes wrinkles. You also have all of the epidermal appendages. Those are the parts of the hair follicle as well as the glands of the skin, which we will be getting into next. In there are also the erector pili muscle. This is a smooth involuntary muscle, so it's involuntary muscle just like the heart muscle. It works on its own without us having to think about it. Smooth involuntary muscle that each hair follicle has to erect or pull down the hair follicle and the hair along with it. This helps with heat retention and cooling, and also to help communicate when a dog's hackles are up. There's also blood vessels. Those provide nutrients, oxygen, and remove or eliminate waste. They're white blood cells. Therein, the white blood cells find and help to destroy infections and microorganisms. There are also dermal sensory nerve bundles, or nerve endings. These are responsible for the detection of pressure and trauma, injury and pain, hold and heat retention. Okay. And then beneath that, the deepest layer is the hypodermis. This is also called the pedunculus, and that definitely belongs to the vet. The hypodermis is composed of fat cells, and it supports the dermis and all of the connective tissues. It provides cushion from outside forces and protects the underlying musculature, joints, ligaments, skeleton, and internal organs. Within here are fat cells. Those support dermal tissues. They hold and conserve heat, they buffer stressors, and they store insoluble vitamins, lipids, and chemicals. These insoluble chemicals and vitamins, which are sometimes taken in via consumption or absorption through nutrition, are far more than the body can use or excrete. So that when that happens, those are stored in fat cells. This is important because it's important to note that if a dog's fat cells break down rapidly, say due to stress or injury or illness, that those toxins can actually be released into the body to toxic levels. Mentioning this is also important in the case of using a residual effect insecticide for treating parasites with regard to how quickly the body can safely eliminate that without adding up more to the point of toxicity. For example, a residual of 10 days would mean that you would not want to reapply any residual about 15 to 20 days from that, just to be safe, so that it doesn't bioaccumulate, or should say internally accumulate within those fat cells. As well, it should be mentioned that the release of toxins from underlying fat cells and within storing pockets of connective tissue between the cellular layers, the muscle layers, as with during a massage, is why it's so strongly recommended that both humans and animals follow any massage work with plenty of fresh water. Water helps to flush those toxins and provide a natural vehicle by which to do so. So there you have some specific science-based information about the form and function of canine skin. As you can see from this info, there's a lot going on beyond the scope of what our eyes can see with every pet that's on our table. It's true that by gaining this knowledge and information that it will inevitably change the very way that you groom and the way that you see the pets that come into you for grooming care. All of this is going on a scientific level beyond the scope of our eyes. It's both liberating and exciting to widen your skill set and broaden your business ability by being able to practice beneficial methods and applications in a salon on a daily basis. Now, in our next segment, we'll be talking specifically about the physiology and function of canine hair and of the total hair coat.